change. No, you didn't vote for them and I didn't vote for them. But they are listened to by the government. They say that we are going to have to halve the amount of meat we eat by 2050. We're going to have to cut the number of livestock to reduce greenhouse gases. They also want to cut the number of flights we're getting by 15%, slash the number of miles driven by a whole third. But what's it all going to cost? That, along with the plan to end the sale of household gas boilers by 2033 and eventually replace all the gas boilers in the country. We're told this is all going to cost in excess of £1 trillion. Yes, you heard that right. So who's going to pay for it? Well, let's talk to Baroness Bennett, Natalie Bennett, as was Green Party peer and former leader of the Green Party, of course. Good morning to you, Natalie.
Good morning, Julia, morning. And still Natalie Bennett, really.
That's why I thought I should have asked that and not called you Baroness, but I thought you probably would want to just be called Natalie. I'm holding out for Empress. I won't accept anything less, and I think you should have held out as well. This small matter of £1 trillion bill for us to change the whole way we live our lives, what we eat, how we travel, and all the rest of that. It gets remarkably little debate, doesn't it?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think if you look at the fact that people have been talking about what happens post-COVID, a survey showed that 80% of people want to build back better. And what does that mean? That means things like warm, comfortable, affordable to heat homes for everybody. It means healthier food. It means huge business opportunities, lots of bus driving jobs. What we're talking about is transforming our society with cleaner air, with much more green spaces available to us, with lots of trees and lots of wildlife in them. So what we're doing is, we're having a debate now about how do we rebuild after the COVID crisis. And what we're saying is these green measures, something's often called the Green New Deal, build our much better lives for everybody. What we were doing before wasn't working very well.
It was working remarkably well for most of us. Incredible growth and incredible increases in people's quality of life and cutting the cost of living. You say we're having a debate. I worry we're not having a debate. We were talking to Lord Matt Ridley a little bit earlier, and it seems to me that whichever party is voted into office, we always seem to get the Green Party. You only get about 2-point-something% of votes in a general election, but you seem to you're smiling away because you know perfectly well you seem to be having a lot more influence on the political discourse than your votes should actually count. You say 80% of people support Build Back Better. If someone came to me in the street and said, do you think we should build back better or do you think we should build back worse? I think I'd say build back better. It doesn't have any meaning. When we actually ask people, are you concerned about the environment? Do you think we should do more? Yes, yes. When you actually say to people, are you happy to pay, 2 or 3 times for your electricity, your gas at home? Are you happy to not be allowed to have your own car? Are you happy to have to buy a car that will cost, £6,000 a year more? Are you happy to have a limit on the number of flights you can take? People aren't happy about that at all, but we never ask them those specific questions.
Well, I think to pick up some of what you just said, in terms of prices for electricity, the cheapest electricity there is now is wind and solar.
It's subsidised. That's why it's cheap. It's subsidised. We're paying tax. No. We pay a surcharge on our electricity and gas bills to subsidise the green power. Come on, that's a fact.
No, the cheapest electricity that you can now generate, there is no subsidy. They are building solar farms now which have no subsidy involved in them. So this is the cheapest source of electricity. You don't have to listen to me. If you listen, any financial analyst will tell you the same thing. And if we think about, we have a huge problem with air pollution. We have tens of thousands of people dying prematurely every year.
We don't. That's a nonsense. No, Natalie. No, you see, I'm sorry. I know I'm the only broadcaster in Britain who doesn't allow these things to be said, and everyone pretends it's all true. I've read that actual document. That is not what that document says. It is about equivalent years life lost across an entire population over decades. It's not equivalent of 10,000 people dying early. It's not. It's just a load of nonsense. And you're too clever to not know that. Come on.
People can choose whether to believe a peer-reviewed journal article that I'm citing, or
you're misquoting it. It's not a question of believing. It's what the actual document said.
Well, look, we can argue about that peer-reviewed document, and we know exactly what it says. And what we're talking about is people's lives, people who are suffering now. Air pollution also has big impacts on asthma, as indeed do cold, damp homes. And if we invest in insulation, home energy efficiency, then what we're doing is ensuring, a grandma now who, his health is at risk because she has a cold, damp home, being healthy, not putting pressure on the NHS in future.
But if we didn't, wait a minute, if
come
we
around and do their homework in a nice, warm, comfortable environment.
Can I say, grandchildren should not be doing their homework with grandma right now. Just a small point on COVID, but I understand your point. Of course, we could just make energy costs much cheaper, so no one had to worry whether or not they could afford their heating. Look, obviously, we all agree with things like that. Of course, we don't want anyone in a cold, damp home, and absolutely. But when you talk about
there you go, Julia. We've come a long way.
Yeah,
I can remember you and I having discussions
like
about plastics, and we've made a real change in understanding we need to tackle plastics.
Would I prefer the sun to shine, and do I like apple pie? Yes, I do. These are meaningless things in terms of this is not people actually being forced to pay for it.
Let's think about where your apple pie comes from. Wouldn't it be great if there's a ring of market gardens around towns, cities and villages? That's hundreds of jobs, lots of small business opportunities, fresh local food, better tasting food. We have a system at the moment that just is not working, and that's what the public is saying and understanding.
You're saying we should go back. We should go back to a system where we don't have the economies of scale and the benefits of it. I mean, come on, this is just let's go back to medieval times, and we'll all just grow everything in our own gardens. For goodness' sake,
this is the externalised costs of a planet filled with plastic, a planet being heated up, which we have to tackle the climate emergency. This is the practical reality of tackling the climate emergency.
It's not a climate emergency. Just clarify exactly when is the planet going to? And you correct me. Is it going to blow up, go on fire, be deluged by water? I mean, what's the emergency again? Tell me.
Well, we are already 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial levels.
Yes, it's been growing
at 1.5 degrees.
Who decided that?
Look at the because that's what the scientists, the evidence tells us.
Tells us what? Yeah. And then what's going to happen if we go above that?
Then we get to the risk of runaway climate change.
Do we?
Then goes
That's what the computer models say.
6 degrees. And this is we don't have to put this at a very high scientific level. Let's think about if you have a baby that looks hot and uncomfortable and overheated and is pushing the blanket off itself. What do? You take the blanket off. That's what we're talking about doing, is taking the blanket off.
Oh, but what you're talking about is not, to use your analogy, we're not taking the blanket off, Natalie. We're throwing the baby in and plunging the baby under freezing cold water. That your solution to the problem that you perceive is that, one final question to you. Do you not think that the innovation and the scientific discovery that we have seen just in the last few months in terms of our ability to come up with a vaccine for a new deadly virus so quickly, does that not give you hope that human ingenuity and invention and innovation will actually lead to resolving whatever issues there are from climate change?
Very much so, and that's exactly what the Committee on Climate Change is suggesting, using innovation, using electric cars, using what's known as vehicle to grid, so we can actually store electricity in your car and then draw it in to fuel your house when you need it. It's talking about using agroecology, understanding all of our new understanding, and I apologise, I have an agricultural science degree, so I can get very excited about how we now understand how the soils work, and so we can get rid of artificial fertilisers and pesticides and work with nature to use those systems. That's all innovation, understanding, using human knowledge to solve our problems. And the climate emergency is our pressing problem we need to tackle.
Okay, but again, a lot of these things are going to be solved not just by the market, but by things improving, and therefore we move on. People aren't going by horse and cart anymore, not because we banned horse and carts, but because cars were better. And when we've got a better version of cars, we'll move to those as well. It seems to me we should be doing this from consumer choice and from price and the market, rather than wagging fingers and forcing people to do them. But Natalie, absolute pleasure to talk to you, always is. Baroness Bennett, Green Party peer, former leader of the Green Party. 9:31 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about the